1. Introduction. The Douglas DC-4, DC-6, and DC-7 represent the varied development of the quad-engine piston airliner during the 1940s and 1950s. 2. DC-4. Ever-increasing acceptance of air transportation, sparked by the reduced travel times it offered over existing rail means, along with improvements in safety and reliability, sparked the need for larger capacity, longer-range aircraft during the end of the 1930s, particularly to fulfill the still elusive goal of providing non-stop transcontinental service. Based therefore upon the foundation laid by its all-metal, twin-engine DC-3 monoplane, Douglas Aircraft Company commenced design studies of a larger successor after a consortium of 5 US carriers, inclusive of American, Eastern Pan Am, TWA, and United, each contributed zero toward the development of a prototype that would incorporate all current advancements, yet at the same time offer double the number of power plants, rest on a tricycle undercarriage, and accommodate a greater number of passengers. The conventionally configured result, sporting a low, straight wing, a triple vertical tail, for 1,400 HP Pratt and Whitney twin Hornet engines, and seating for up to 52 in a pressurized cabin, first took to the sky on June 21, 1938. Designated DC-4E, it offered a 190 mph cruising speed and a 2,000-mile range. Although the then mammoth 65,000-pound airliner incorporated considerable advancement, including a well-appointed galley and smoking and dressing rooms, it represented too much of a leap for the era, and the sponsoring carriers requested both modifications and a reduction in size. Equally anticipating lower passenger demand, because of the pending war, Douglas redesigned it with a shorter, unpressurized fuselage accommodating 42, a shorter span, tapered wing, and a more conventional single vertical fin, resulting in the definitive DC-4. World War II, in the event, provided a far greater impact on the program than anticipated. Indeed, after the infamous December 7, 1941 Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, the 24 aircraft that had been intermittently ordered by American and United were requisitioned by the US Army Air Corps for use as transports, and the first of these, draped in military livery, first flew on February 14 of the following year, now designated the C-54 Skymaster. Those operated by the Navy were identified as R-5DS. The war, at least in terms of production, had a positive influence on the type, with 1,163 military versions ultimately built by 1945, while 79 additional, purely commercial counterparts were constructed after this time. The first, operated by American Overseas Airlines, inaugurated the first post-war transatlantic service with it, from New York to Herne, England, via Gander, Newfoundland, and Shannon, Ireland, in October. Numerous ex-military C-54s were also converted to commercial standard, and the type formed the backbone of many airlines' post-war fleets. Powered by 1,450 HP Pratt and Whitney R2002 SD-13G twin Wasp radial engines, the DC-4 featured a 93.5-foot overall length, a 117.6-foot wingspan, and a 1,462 square foot area. Carrying a 14,200-pound maximum payload, the aircraft, with a 73,000-pound gross weight, could cruise at 207 mph and fly 1,150 to 2,180 mile non-stop sectors, depending upon its payload to fuel ratio. Both profitable and flexible, it could accommodate up to 86 single-class passengers, making it particularly attractive to charter or non-scheduled carriers, and could alternatively carry main deck cargo after the installation of an upward opening door. 3. DC-6. In order to cater to anticipated post-war demand and remain competitive with Lockheed's own comparable quad-engine L649/749 Constellation airliners, Douglas stretched the DC-4 by 81 inches, in the process confirming that its configuration would serve as the standard for long-range transports. Although it retained its wing, platform span, area, and hydraulically actuated, double-slotted flaps, it reintroduced the pressurization briefly offered by the original DC-4 and increased its passenger capacity to match it. Attempting to compete with TWA's Constellations, both American and United respectively placed launch orders for 50 and 35 of what would become the DC-6 in late 1944. Originally intended for the US Army Air Force, the type, initially designated XC-112, first flew in prototype form, powered by 4 2,100 HP Pratt and Whitney R2800-34 engines, on February 15, 1946, but with resolution of World War II, they no longer needed a military version, leaving the first commercial variant to take to the sky 4 months later. Although outwardly similar to the DC-4 upon which it was based, the DC-6 offered several design variations. Powered itself by 2,100 HP, 18-cylinder, 2-row, air-cooled Pratt and Whitney R2800 CA-15 double wasp engines, featuring 3-bladed, electric-lead propellers. For instance, it introduced rectangular passenger windows and a squared-off tail. Its wing empennage and windshield were provisioned with thermal anti-icing. Internally it featured an electronic autopilot system, an automatic pressure control system, air temperature and humidity, conditioning radiantly heated floors and walls, and the ability to accept preloaded cargo containers. The 8.10-foot wide by 7-foot high cabin accommodated 46 20-inch wide, Douglas-designed, 4-abreast seats, installed at a 40-inch pitch, along with 6 in and aft lounge. First flying on July 10, 1946 and delivered to launch customers American and United during a joint ceremony on November 27. It was inaugurated into service on April 27 of the following year, affording 10-hour eastbound and 11-hour westbound transcontinental schedules. Cabin configurations varied according to carrier. American, for example, accommodated 54 abreast day passengers or 24 night sleeper ones in ceiling extendable upper berths with their own slender upper fuselage windows and 42 by 76 inch lower ones created by the seats themselves. Sabina, the type's first foreign operator, offered mixtures of both. Other DC-6 operators included Braniff Delta, KLM, Linea Italiana, National, Conagra Pan American Grace Airways and SAS. Of the aircraft's several records, that on March 2, 1950, entailing a 3-hour, 8-minute flight from Chicago to Miami operated by Delta at a 376 mph speed, was notable and indicative of the improving performance of the modern piston liner. Analysis of the basic DC-6 design indicated that it was structurally capable of carrying additional payload when coupled with a modest 5-foot fuselage stretch to increase its center of gravity range and higher horsepower engines, resulting in 2 further versions. The first, a dedicated freighter, designated the DC-6A Liftmaster, featured port 7.7 by 5.7 forward and 10.4 by 6.6 foot aft main deck, upward opening cargo doors. First flying on September 29, 1949, it entered service with Slick Airways, which ultimately flew 13 on April 16, 1951. 18 carriers placed 67 orders for the type. The second, and all-passenger version, dubbed the DC-6B, featured 54 4-abreast seats, along with a 6-place aft lounge, although high-density arrangements permitted accommodation of up to 102. First flying on February 2, 1951 and entering service with United Airlines 2 months later, on April 11, the type, powered by 4 2,500 HPR, 2,800 CB, 17 double wasp engines, featured a 105.7-foot overall length and 117.6-foot wingspan. Carrying a 24,565-pound payload and offering a 107,000-pound all-up weight, it could cruise at 316 mph and serve 3,000 to 4,720 mile sectors. Operated by American, Continental National, Northeast Northwest, Pan Am, Trans-American United, and Western Indios, and Alitalia, KLM, Linea Italiane, Olympic, Sabena SAS, and Swissair in Europe. It enjoyed a 288 aircraft production run, offering the lowest seat mile costs of any then current Piston airliner. It facilitated considerable interior and route flexibility, proving particularly attractive to all tourist North Atlantic operators. Northeast, for example, operated its DC-6s along the East Coast, funneling passengers from its once traditional New England route system encompassing Montreal, New York, and Washington to Florida sunspots, while Northwest served the Pacific with its dozen aircraft. Western operated the type, with an 8-seat forward, 38-seat main, and 14-seat aft cabin, in addition to the standard 6-place lounge. The type enabled SAS to inaugurate service on the Great Circle route from Copenhagen to Los Angeles, over the North Pole, in November of 1954, reducing travel time by 10 hours over the traditional transatlantic journey via New York. Replacing its theropods with DC-6s, Olympic served European and Eastern Mediterranean destinations with mixed forward day and aft night sleeper configurations. Ethiopian Airlines operated its DC-6s in a high-density arrangement, carrying 102 passengers between its Khartoum base in Africa and Athens and Frankfurt in Europe. LAN Chile connected the North and South American continents with its aircraft, linking Miami with Lima, Peru. Australian National operated 4 aircraft to cities within its home country, often pioneering routes. SAS inaugurated the first scheduled round-the-world service on May 29, 1953, requiring just over 83 hours for the global circumnavigation. A succeeding, convertible DC-6C variant, although only garnering 7 orders, incorporated both DC-6A and 6B features, facilitating main deck mixtures of passengers and cargo, ranging from 76 of the former, their baggage, and 2,400 pounds of general freight, to an all-cargo load of almost 13 tons. By means of a movable, 4-position bulkhead. First delivered to Hunting Clan Airways on August 7, 1958, it was subsequently joined by existing aircraft, converted to this standard either by Douglas or its approved modification center, Pacific Aeromotive. Sabena produced 2 aircraft with swing tails to enable it to accommodate outsized cargo pieces as long as 60 feet. Several military versions were ultimately also built. The first of 100 ordered C-180s, based upon the DC-6A, flew on July 15, 1962 and was operated by the Military Air Transport Command MATS, which was later renamed the Military Airlift Command, while the Navy ordered 6501s, which themselves were redesignated C-180s. A singular DC-118, utilizing a DC-6 production slot reserved for American Airlines, became President Truman's aircraft, named the Independence, when it was delivered on July 1, 1947. 4. DC-7. Keeping pace with unrelenting passenger increases, yet remaining competitive with Lockheed's own multiply-stretched constellation that would soon appear in L-1049 and L-1649 Starliner models. Douglas examined a still larger DC-6B derivative capable of offering non-stop westbound transcontinental service and potentially transoceanic ones, once again based upon impetus from American Airlines, which placed its initial contract in December of 1951 for what would become the ultimate evolution of the quad-engine piston liner. First flying 2 years later, on May 18, and naturally designated DC-7, it introduced a 42-inch forward of the wing fuselage stretch to either accommodate an additional seat row or more cargo, and resulted in a 62-passenger interior subdivided into 8 forward, 38 main, and 16 aft seat cabins, respectively separated by lavatories and a galley/buffet. The latter, as with all previous models, was provisioned with an aft 4-passenger door. Optionally higher densities entailed between 80 and 99 Sleeper or day and night mixed arrangements could also be chosen, with the passengers accommodated in fore, aft, upper, and lower berths. Delta Airlines, for example, carried 8 passengers in the forward skyroom, 42 in the main cabin, 14 in the rear section, and 5 in the payload with their hostess. It operated between Chicago and Miami. Although the type employed the same wing introduced by the DC-4 with its maximum 50-degree trailing edge flap travel, the previously reliable Pratt & Whitney R2800 engines had reached their peak of development, thus requiring a new type to cater to the higher gross weights needed for increased range and payload. In this case, the 18-cylinder, 3,250 HP air-cooled Wright R3350 turbo compound, driving four-bladed, governor-controlled, hydraulically positioned Hamilton standard propellers was selected. Because of the inner engine's proximity to the fuselage, they were restricted to 13.5-foot diameters, and because of their increased size, they along with the outer ones were housed in redesigned nacelles. Although they offered a 20% increase in output in comparison to the Pratt & Whitney engines powering the DC-6, they offered comparable fuel consumption. The hydraulically actuated, forward retracting tricycle undercarriage, consisting of a single nose wheel and dual main wheels, was retained, although the main gear could be independently extended to serve as a speed brake at 300 mph IAS or 410 mph at 20,000 feet to augment rapid but controlled descents. CAA certified on November 12, 1953 after a 204 flight test program conducted over a 6-month period. The DC-7 was inaugurated into service 17 days later with American Airlines for the first time, permitting bidirectional east and westbound transcontinental operations. 3 other carriers, including Delta National and United, placed orders, bringing total production to 105. In order to avoid confusion with its existing DC-6A liftmaster, Douglas used the B or DC-7B designation to denote the first variant of the baseline model, in this case a still higher gross weight and longer range aircraft that was sparked by Pan Am's late 1953 order for 7 with intercontinental range. Introducing optional external range extending saddle fuel tanks installed in the upper portion of the engine nacelles, provision for propeller spinners, improved wing flaps, and gross weights as high as 126,000 pounds. The type first flew on April 21, 1955. It was certified the following month, on May 27, and entered service with Pan Am on the transatlantic New York-London route 1 month after that on June 13. Only operated by a single foreign carrier, namely South African Airways on intercontinental sectors, such as from Johannesburg to London. The DC-7B was primarily ordered by US operators, including American, Continental Delta, Eastern National, Pan Am itself, and Conagra, which served South American destinations with it. 112 were built. Along with Boss Packard 07, National was able to satisfy passenger demand on its Florida routes with an additional 4 DC-7Bs. Eastern also serving Florida destinations and hitherto operating earlier Constellation versions ordered 50 DC-7Bs, configuring the first 30 with 64 seats, but introducing high-density, all-coach, 93 passenger interiors with the last 20. Delta equally operated its 11 aircraft with varying densities from 69 to 90. Although the DC-7B offered the required transatlantic range, as evidenced by Pan Am's own operations, winds sometimes dictated the need for refueling stops in Gander, once again prompting Douglas to design a version with even greater capability, and this became the DC-7C, the definitive and ultimate expression of Piston airliner development. Aside from incorporating another fuselage stretch, in this case, of 42 inches, it was the first to employ a modification of the basic DC-4 wing, entailing a 10-foot extension by means of 5-foot plugs inserted between the inner engine nacelles and the fuselage. It featured a 127.6-foot span 1,637 square foot area and increased 9.93 aspect ratio and could accommodate 1,000 additional range translating pounds of fuel. Varying in capacity from 4,512 to 6,378 gallons, carried in both the greater volume wing and in the enlarged engine nacelle saddle tanks. It permitted 3,610 to 5,642 mile ranges to be flown. Because of the 5-foot greater distance between the inner power plants and the fuselage, the cabin, able to accommodate up to 105 passengers, was quieter, while the clearance also facilitated the use of 14-foot diameter propellers. Powered by 3,400 HP Wright 3,350 EA1 or EA4 piston radials, the DC-7C could carry a 21,500 pound payload and had a 143,000 pound gross weight. Cruise speed was 345 mph and service ceiling was as high as 21,700 feet. Serving as a true intercontinental airliner, it was capable of full payload, east and westbound transatlantic operations against any wind condition. First flying on December 20, 1955, it entered service with Pan Am the following year, on June 1. Although it became its largest operator, with 26 aircraft and 3 other US carriers order the type, it saw extensive foreign airline service with the likes of Alitalia, BOAC, Mexicana de Aviación, Japan Airlines, KLM, Conair du Brasil, Sabena SAS, and Swissair. SAS achieved the record flight with the type when it flew its 6,005 miles on November 17, 1956, requiring 21 hours, 44 minutes for the trip. 5. Threshold to the jet age. Synonymous with stretched fuselage aircraft, which resulted in the DC-1 to DC-3 and then the DC-4 to DC-7 series of piston airliners. Douglas next considered a power plant type change, instead in order to remain competitive with the emerging turboprop Vickers B.700 and .800 and Lockheed L-188 Electra aircraft, conducting a number of both DC-6 and DC-7 airframe studies that incorporated this technology. The most significant was the proposed DC-7D. Powered by 4 Rolls-Royce RB.109, it would have introduced yet another 40-inch fuselage stretch and a swept vertical tail. Despite strong interest from long loyal American Airlines, Douglas could not prove the economic feasibility of the project, although it would most likely have been the first long-range turbine-powered airliner to have appeared, and elected instead to bypass this technology and immediately produce a pure jet design, the DC-8, considered the DC-7's next-generation successor. Based upon the overwhelming passenger acceptance of and therefore demand for this vibrationless, speed-fostering power plant, Douglas along with Boeing and, to a lesser degree, de Havilland with their respective 707 and DH.106 Comet aircraft, provided the threshold to this next stage of airliner development, accelerating the replacement of both piston and turboprop aircraft on all but short-range routes.